James Edward Hanger went from being one of the Civil War's first recorded amputees to founding a company that still helps more than 500,000 patients walk each year. Welcome to the Celebrating America 250 podcast. This series is dedicated to the men and women who wore the uniform, and then came home to build, invent, and lead in ways that reshaped our nation. Across these episodes, we honor veteran innovators from every era of American history. Warriors who became entrepreneurs, engineers, organizers, and visionaries, carrying the mindset of service into factories, farms, shipyards, laboratories, and boardrooms. In each story, we will trace a simple arc: where they came from, how they served, the moment they pivoted to civilian life, what they built, and the legacy they left behind for all of us. This is not just about dates and titles. It is about courage under pressure, resilience in transition, and the quiet, determined work of building a stronger country. Interesting fact: on the morning of June 3, 1861, an 18-year-old engineering student named James Hanger was in Philippi, Western Virginia, when a 6-pound Union cannonball tore through the wall and shattered his left leg. Surgeons amputated it 7 inches below the hip, making him one of the first major amputee cases of the Civil War. And yet that moment, which should have ended his independence, instead launched a prosthetics revolution and a global medical enterprise. Today, we will trace how a wounded cavalryman turned his own lost limb into a blueprint for modern mobility. Early life and background. James Edward Hanger was born in 1843 in Churchville, Virginia, a rural community where craftsmanship, self-reliance, and faith shaped daily life. By his late teens, he was studying engineering at Washington College, showing an early talent for math, mechanics, and hands-on problem-solving. Hanger grew up in a culture where work and responsibility started young. Farms, mills, and workshops were classrooms as much as the college lecture hall. That mix of formal engineering education and practical frontier ingenuity would prove crucial when war pulled him out of school and into uniform. Leadership under pressure. In June 1861, just weeks after Virginia joined the Confederacy, Hanger enlisted in the Churchville Cavalry, a local Confederate unit. Like many young men on both sides, he marched off expecting a short conflict and found instead a brutal laboratory of mud, fear, and improvisation. At Philippi, one of the war's first organized land engagements, Hanger's unit faced Union artillery as they tried to hold the town. When that cannonball smashed through the stable where he had been, both bones in his left leg were destroyed. Union surgeons, led, according to later accounts, by an Ohio doctor, performed an emergency amputation on a makeshift operating table with Hanger awake and fully conscious. In the space of a morning, he went from mounted cavalryman to disabled prisoner of war. The experience taught him the harsh reality of 19th century battlefield medicine and the lifelong cost of industrial-age weapons. It also gave him a front-row seat to the gap between what wounded soldiers needed and what medicine could provide. The pivot. Carrying that mindset into civilian life, released and eventually sent home to Staunton, Hanger was fitted with the standard government-issue prosthesis of the day, a rigid wooden peg leg. For an 18-year-old who had loved motion, horses, and engineering, the device was both physically painful and psychologically devastating. It was heavy, inflexible, and made simple tasks, walking, climbing stairs, standing for long periods, awkward and exhausting. Rather than accept that limitation, Hanger began to do what engineers do: study the problem. He examined the peg leg not as a patient but as a designer, identifying where it failed to mimic the natural gait of a human leg. The pivot came when he stopped asking, "How do I live with this?" and started asking, "What would a better leg look like, from the inside out?" His personal loss became a technical brief. His mission shifted from surviving as an amputee to creating a new kind of limb that restored as much normal movement as possible. What he invented, founded, or grew. Working in his family's home and with the materials at hand, Hanger designed and built what became known as the Hanger limb. Instead of a single wooden peg, he crafted a prosthesis from oak barrel staves with articulated joints at both the knee and ankle, using rubber bumpers and carefully placed hinges to absorb shock and mimic the roll of a real stride. The result was lighter, more comfortable, and far more functional than existing devices, allowing smoother walking and better balance. In 1863, he secured Confederate patent number 155 for his design, and after the war he went on to obtain U.S. patent number 11741 in 1871, formalizing his innovations in the reunited nations legal system. Demand was immediate. Thousands of amputees, Confederate and Union, were trying to rebuild their lives, and Hanger's limb offered dignity as well as mobility. He launched a manufacturing and fitting business in Virginia, eventually winning government contracts to provide prosthetics to veterans. Over time, he expanded into a network of workshops and clinics, standardizing measurement, production, and fitting processes in a way that anticipated modern medical device companies. Hanger was not just selling hardware, he was building an ecosystem around patient-centered prosthetic care, with iterative prototyping and direct feedback from the people wearing his limbs every day. How it changed lives, industry, and community. James Edward Hanger died in 1919, but the company he founded, today known simply as Hanger Inc., has grown into one of the world's largest providers of prosthetic and orthotic care. Modern Hanger clinics serve more than 500,000 patients annually across the United States and Europe, from combat veterans and accident survivors to children born with limb differences. Each year they serve about 5,000 veterans with prosthetic care, and partner closely with VA clinical teams to ensure that veterans receive consistent, high-quality care aligned with their treatment plans. Their nationwide footprint gives veterans access to services close to home, which reduces travel burden and improves follow-through on care. The design principles he pioneered, articulated joints, attention to gait biomechanics, and individualized fitting, remain at the core of advanced prosthetics, even as materials have shifted from oak and rubber to carbon fiber and microprocessor-controlled knees. Hanger's story also reshaped how America thinks about disabled veterans. In an era when losing a limb often meant losing your role in society, he proved that mobility could be restored and that amputees could become innovators, business owners, and leaders in their own right. For veterans and entrepreneurs today, his trajectory offers a powerful blueprint. Start from a real pain point you understand in your bones. Turn trauma into a design challenge, not just a personal tragedy. Build systems, companies, clinics, technologies that serve others facing the same struggle. From a shattered leg in the Philippi